for the very generous introduction. Distinguished guests, Kiwanis, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the Kiwanis Club Kingsport Mayoral Candidate Forum. It is my pleasure to serve as moderator for today, and I hope the gentleman in the back can find a place to sit. There are some chairs over here and right here as well. As Kiwanians, of course, we're very proud of our strong and commitment to civic responsibility. And as with Kiwanians worldwide, we're very proud of that commitment to children and providing service for our community, one child and one community at a time. We are absolutely delighted to host Kingsport's 3 mayoral candidates today, Michael Lathrop, Pat Shull, and Brian Woliver. The guidelines for this forum are as follows. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to make an introductory statement, 60 seconds to respond to the forum questions, and lastly, 2 minutes for a closing statement. Admiral John McKinley is our timekeeper, and he will alert each speaker when time has elapsed. He will give a 15-second warning, and then, if needed, a time's up signal. Admiral, please demonstrate for the candidates. Gentlemen, again, we're delighted you're here, and we look forward to learning more about you and about your candidacy. We will begin with the opening statements from our candidates, beginning with Mr. Lathrop.
Hello, everybody. And before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you to the Kiwanis Club for not only the generous invitation to me today to be here, but more importantly, the opportunity this forum and with the other candidates have given the people of Kingsport over time to learn more about the people who are going to be guiding us into the future as we come out of a very difficult time in our lives. My background is I'm an entrepreneur, a small businessman. I had a great deal of experience in management supervisory capacities in both the publishing and later telecom business. More recently, a couple of things that I think are very relevant. I work as a tax preparer January through April, or May or July, depending on the year lately. And I've also had the opportunity to work with the 2020 U.S. Census. So in the midst of a pandemic, when it's a very difficult time for folks, I've got a very unique perspective on not only what people are going through to survive these times, but a good look at their financial situation as well. And I see a lot of things out there that concern me, not only amongst the citizens, but our businesses as well. The ones who were innovative enough to survive through the pandemic as long as they have, even being on the cusp, there's still a lot of folks out there who are hanging by their fingernails to stay in business. I think it's imperative that we support our local businesses now more than ever, and let's get through this together. I'm unlike my opponents. I'm not born and raised here. I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I moved about 16 times in my life before landing here in Kingsport in 1999. Suffice it to say, I've had a fair amount of addresses in a lot of different cities and states, so I have some perspective on what other towns deal with. But the one thing I've found here, out of all that moving, this is the first time I've landed in a place where, in my heart, I truly feel like I'm in a place that I can call my home. And my home isn't just the roof over my head. My home is my town, my city. It's important to me, and I love it. And the reality is, going forward, our lives are all going to change, like it or not. And the way our cities are to adapt to that needs to change along with those needs to make sure we do one of 3 things. And I think every town everywhere will go through this. We're going to die. We're going to survive. We're good at it. We showed it. There's resilient, smart, innovative people here. Or we can thrive. That's what I want for Kingsport, and I'd like to be the one to earn your vote to guide us into a situation where we can survive in the future. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Supposedly, a reporter asked President Trump about the importance of humility. And the president said, humility is very important, and there's nobody more humble than I am. Which kind of sums up my dilemma. You know, I think the expectation is I'll stand up here and tell you what a great mayor I've been and all the great things I'm going to do. But in reality, it is a simple answer because it's a team effort. Now, it's kind of an unusual team in that the other 6 members on the board of mayor and aldermen, they all have a vote. I only have 1 vote. But when faced with the pandemic, we had a couple of choices. I'm looking over here at my friend and colleague, Daryl. We could have either fallen apart or we could have come together. And we came together. We passed a budget that cut spending from what we had originally planned. We paved more roads. We lowered the debt. We did not increase the rates for water or sewer. We made a lot of progress. There's still some things to be done, but the Board of Mayor and Aldermen did come together and did achieve a lot in moving the city forward. Now, we also have great city staff. The city manager and I, we see each other every day. Mary's accused me of spending more time with Chris than with her, but I don't think that's true. But great young city manager, great staff, and we're going to continue to do some great things in the future. We still got to pave some more mileage. People tell me that. I've been going door to door a lot, and I guess I'll sum it up. Except for the time I woke up the baby, that was a little uncomfortable. And then I woke this lady up out of her nap. She didn't actually appreciate that. But other than that, I've had some really good interactions going door to door. And what people typically say is they simply thank me. They thank me for my leadership. Well, again, it's a team effort, and I guess I'm the coach, the manager, a player, a lot of different things. That's just the nature of the city government. But I appreciate you Kiwanians continuing the tradition of holding these forums. And I'm very proud to be a Kiwanian myself, and I appreciate it if you'd vote for me. Thank you.
Well, it's on. I'm just talking. I'm not used to it. So anyways, I am Brian Woliver. I'm a Kingsport native, born and raised here. I am not a politician by no means, and that's no thing saying, hey, vote for me, because I'm not, because that's not what it is. I never intended on running for mayor until I noticed a lot of things going on in the community. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I was born and raised here, graduated from Dobbins-Bennett. Played football there, very proud of my city. Love my city. Every year in Fun Fest, I mean, it was something to be proud of. After I graduated in Dobbins-Bennett, I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, and I loved it there. Wanted to look out for the children and our youth that's going to mold our future. Joined the Marine Corps. I joined the infantry in the Marine Corps, joined 05 and 07. I went to Iraq, in Fallujah and Ramadi, and that's where I got injured in the line of duty, received the Purple Heart, and they sent me home. Well, when I was getting ready to leave, all my brothers in the Marine Corps was like, dude, where are you going? And a lot of them was moving to new places away from their hometowns, and I was like, there's only one place I want to go, and it's back to Kingsport. I love Kingsport. I brought many friends and brothers from the Marine Corps back here. They come every year to visit still. We always got to get pals. It's just the way it is. But they love it here, and they understand why I came back. We got 4 seasons, a phenomenal community, great backing, and we have an opportunity here to do something great. I understand the pandemic and a lot of things that's been going on, but hopefully we come out of this hitting the ground running. I'm married to an amazing woman, Jana. She has blessed me with 2 absolutely insane but great boys. They keep us on our toes. Very proud of our boys. Let's see. Since I've been out, I actually got invited to a lot of Wounded Warrior organizations where I was brought as a participant, and over time I kept going back. And then I ended up mentoring, and I ended up starting to be a part of these 501c3s, helping these wounded veterans transition back to the world. So that's been a big part of things that I've been doing for a long time. I coach youth football here, which is fantastic. I love coaching these kids. Then I have been doing the mentoring program for Redemptive Life Foundation for at-risk youth coming up. And we have to look out for the kids first, because one day we're all going to be gone and it's going to be left to them. So it's up to us to determine what we're going to leave to them. Do we want to leave them something that they can flourish and grow into something amazing, or are we going to give them troubles and worries and worrying about what the next step is? But with all that being said, I am shaking up here. Appreciate you. I'm done. Appreciate y'all. If you vote for me, that'd be fantastic, and I would love it. Thanks.
All right, and candidates, at this point, it's your choice. We'll move into the questions themselves, and in order to be COVID-minded, we are going to, again, Mr. Woliver, start with you, so we're just passing the mic back and forth in ways that we minimize the confusion. And so the first question, and for those in the audience who only attended last week's session, we are having each of our candidates to respond to each question. And beginning with, the question is, while major projects like Eastman and Domtar have been recently announced and are important to Kingsport's economy, how important do you think it is to diversify the local economy, and how should the BMA be involved?
Okay. Diversity is key to anything you do. You have to be willing to take on a lot, but within a matter of means. Eastman's fantastic, always has been contributed to the community, and it's provided jobs. But I'm sorry, could you say some of it again? I forgot.
How important is it to you that we diversify the local economy, and how should the BMA be involved?
I think we need to get back. I think we need to back these local business owners hardcore, and we really need to promote entrepreneurship. There's a lot of people in this world that's really trying to start a new business, and right now is a great time to do it. And I think the city needs to streamline a process to where we can get these entrepreneurs going and start new businesses in this city.
Well, thank you. Well, if you grew up here like I did, you know our economy is greatly diversified now compared to what it was 50, 60 years ago. Of course, helping out Eastman and Domtar were things we had to do to keep jobs here. The BMA is not, the government I should say, is not the engine of the economy. The private sector is. But the BMA can contribute greatly by maintaining sound infrastructure, low taxes, low cost of living. We have a lot to do with that by the tax rate we set. And we do recruit business, and I've sent out emails to our citizens explaining how Buxton works, a recruiter. And another thing we do is during the move to Kingsport effort, we're trying to get remote workers to work here, and a lot have moved here. If you follow what Jeff Fleming has been putting out, you know that we've been very successful getting other people to live here, which will naturally diversify our economy, because many of them can work from home or set up a small shop downtown or somewhere.
Obviously, as I said, change to adapt to the future is one of the goals I have for the city. And part of that absolutely means diversifying the businesses we attempt to attract. There's a lot of emerging technologies. Just the fact of the number of people who learn to work from home, the face of our economy on the business scale around here will change. We have to adapt to that. There's a lot of emerging technology, but the great thing is we have a wonderful ecosystem between Inventor Center, ThinkSpace, Excel. I can go on and on. I'd like to see that all tied together and working collaboratively to attract the kind of businesses that will attract people to want to know that this is a town set to be successful in the future. The BMA's role in that has to be to provide the quality of life the people who start those kind of businesses want to be involved in. So to borrow one of the big catchphrases of the day, it needs to be a circular effort.
Thank you, gentlemen. We move to our second question, and again, Mr. Lathrop, it will be your opportunity to respond first. How do you feel about the city and the county sharing public services where they legally can, and what would be your main criteria in deciding if each potential partnership is good for Kingsport citizens?
Great question. I think the prime thing we need to do, there always is advantages in working collaboratively with our neighbors, and we need to do that. But we also need to kind of take a look back and see if we're getting a fair shake for the investment that the city puts in for our share on what we're getting back out of that. And primary number one right now, just like you would in your own house, you gotta look out for yourself. So we really kind of gotta watch our wallet tight and make sure we're not putting money into areas where we're not seeing the return on that investment, and move those dollars either to places where they're needed elsewhere or to existing programs that have proven a good return on investment in those ways.
Well, it's kind of a difficult question because of the legalities involved, but we do have several areas where we have cooperation. I'm looking over here at Ronnie because he used to work with the highway department over the county. He worked for the city, but he worked with them, and they would cooperate on roads. You know how when we annexed a lot of the areas that were formerly county, or that city line is real close to the county line now, a lot of different places. We cooperated at the Tri-Pride Parade. The Sheriff's Department sent deputies over to help us with that. We have good relations with the county. Mayor Venable's got my sign in his yard. So, I mean, I'm open to good ideas in this area, but it's not something that's been on our plate other than COVID. We meet regularly on COVID to see what we should do, but that's not exactly sharing the service as it is sharing what to do about a dilemma.
I think cooperation is key. We have to be able to do this all together. You know, obviously like Michael said down there, we've got to make sure we take care of home first. Make sure if there's any projects coming up that we make sure it's a worthwhile investment that's going to benefit us in the long run. But it would be great if we were able to work coherently and cooperate with each other. So anything that we do is always going to work towards the benefit of the region. And that's the big thing, is making sure the people in this region are working towards a common goal, and that we're all working towards success, so we're not falling stagnant and not making any progress.
All right, thank you. We move to our third question. What do you think the role of the mayor should be in Kingsport's government, including the role and the relationship with the city manager?
You know, the city mayor is supposed to be the face of a community. It's supposed to represent the people that dwell within us, to address the issues that the city's bringing up. That's the big thing, making sure that you fairly and accurately represent the people within the city. What was the second part of it? I'm sorry.
Including the
work with the city manager.
Relationship with the city
you got to work hand in hand with the city manager. You know, those types of decisions is not a BMA alone decision. They're just a vote. You know, the city manager's probably got one of the most important jobs in the city, and I think as long as right decisions are being made and the backing of the BMA is there, as long as it's going to benefit the city, that's the big thing.
Well, I have a master's degree in public administration. I actually did an internship in city management in the summer of 1980. And if I hadn't gone back in the Army, I probably would have pursued a career as a city manager, because it's a great field. I see that it's working very well right now. Chris is 46, I'm 67. Everybody needs a sounding board, and Chris often used me for sounding board, and that's good. Now, he's a very capable person, and I don't try to tell him how to operate and to run the city staff. But we have good working relationship. It's a good form of government. I don't see a need to change. We're not big enough to really get into a strong mayor form of government. City council, in fact, we were one of the first cities to adopt council manager form of government during our charter of 1917 that brought the modern Kingsport into being, and it's worked well.
And I think I'll start by agreeing and perhaps elaborating on what my opponents just said. I'm very pleased that we have the form of government we do. I think it provides a lot of checks and balances that a strong mayor or city manager only towns aren't afforded. So that in mind, I see the mayor's role here. The main thing he can do is not so much being the face of the city, but the conduit for communication. And not only taking the voice of the people to the city manager and the BMA, but also being a conduit proactively to put information out to the people, to let them know what we have in mind, let them know what we're doing. There's a lot of antagonistic feelings because people don't learn about something until it's been voted on and they read about it in the newspaper. So I think the main role there is we kind of being that conduit between the people both ways and the city around us.
Thank you, gentlemen. The fifth question. Some residents feel that there has been too much focus on recruiting businesses to downtown Kingsport. Do you feel that's the case? And what would you suggest to ensure that we are highlighting the advantages of locations and needs throughout the city?
Obviously, downtown is kind of the heart and soul of any city, and especially one of this size, and there's already been sizable investments made there. So it's important that we maintain those investments and utilize them to their best ability, but it cannot be the absolute primary focus. Right now, the thing we need to do is attract businesses, and we can't be shoving them downtown if that doesn't fit their needs. If they're in the city limits, this is what we're looking for, and not everybody's going to fit into that mold. If they do, that's awesome, and I would love to see downtown be everything I know it has the potential to be. But we have to have, a complete view over, again, all the things that we have here. There's a lot to offer businesses. So I think just looking at it globally throughout the city limits is important as the downtown.
I listened to a lecture by Richard Florida. He's a well-known, thoughtful person on municipal matters. And he said that the downtown, clearly, as my opponent said, is the heart of the city, and that if it's not thriving to a certain degree, that it will turn off potential new businesses and people to come to your city. So I'm the mayor of all our citizens, regardless of where they live or where their business is. But we need to make sure that the downtown is appealing and attractive. What we're doing at the Brickyard Park is going to create more synergy with the downtown by creating both recreation areas there as well as living homes there and easy access to downtown, which could help more apartments. I went to a great condo the other day being developed downtown now, the old Bell Telephone Building. There's a lot of good things going to happen downtown, and we're at the right time for all those people that are sick of New York City to move to Kingsport.
So, I agree to a certain extent that obviously the downtown is probably the heart of the city. That's where everything goes down. That's where everybody gravitates towards every time you go somewhere. I understand that. As far as recruiting businesses from elsewhere, I think there should always be an effort to recruit businesses, new businesses to come in, provide new opportunities. But I don't want to lose sight of our local small business owners. I don't want to overshadow people that's new entrepreneurs that's trying to start a new business here. Like, I really want to get behind them. I want to back them and let them know that the community has their back. And if they want to start business here, that's fantastic. And give them an opportunity to be downtown if that's what fits their needs, but not restrict them to a certain area. Bring in new businesses, that's fantastic, but I want to make sure our businesses are being successful first.
Thank you. Our next question. It was apparent from our Board of Education candidate forum that updating school facilities will be a priority. How strongly do you feel that that need exists? And as mayor, what will you ask to ensure that the city's resources will be spent cost effectively?
I mean, education is everything, and the youth matters more than most people realize most of the time. So whatever we can do to provide a comfortable learning environment so they can not have to worry about the facilities that they're in, that they can thrive and focus on learning and getting that knowledge for the future so they can be successful, that's extremely important to me. So I think that's great. As far as the funds, I think there's a lot of projects that, you know, probably doesn't need to be going down right now, that we can reallocate those funds to back projects like the school system.
We had a joint meeting with the Board of Education this past Tuesday at my insistence, and they showed us their 10-year plan in 60 seconds, like trying to work from the general to the specific. But bottom line is, between the funds they're getting from the federal government, their fund balance, what we can provide, we can update the facilities over the next 10 years and keep the debt declining. When said again, our debt can still go down. That's great news. Now, about the specifics of in the buildings, well, I think it's no question Dobbs Bennett needs a roof, that Sullivan North needs some renovation. Other things, it boils down to what my colleague Daryl said, there's a differentiation between needs and wants. And we have smart guys on the city staff who can give us an opinion, be it the Director of Public Works, be it our engineers. We're not going to deny the school system something they absolutely need. We're going to maintain a great school system, be it facilities, curriculum, extracurricular activities, you name it.
And no tax increase.
All right. You know, one thing I became aware of as I've begun this journey on this campaign is I was quite alarmed to find out how many of our school facilities are deficient in ADA compliance. From the federal government, school systems and municipalities get somewhat of a pass, but we shouldn't look at that as an excuse not to do it or spend money elsewhere. I think that needs to be a priority, not only to give everybody who needs it the access they deserve and the safety reasons that go along for that, but also the potential liability. If the wrong set of unforeseen circumstances should unfortunately come about, we have some liability troubles we need to address. And certainly, as Pat said, of course, anything that's standard maintenance needs to be addressed and taken care of, roofs, air conditioning, things like that. New facilities, I think we just need to look at it as they come along and see what's available to help fund them.
Our next question. Since 2005, the network's partnership of Kingsport, Bristol, Sullivan County, and Bluff City, and more recently, Hawkins County, has done traditional industrial recruiting. How successful do you think they've been in recruiting quality jobs? And do you think this level of economic development would be stronger if we worked with other regional partners to promote this area?
Okay, you know, obviously Networks has been around a while and they've got some legs and a fairly decent history of doing some successful projects. There's been some that haven't been quite successful as well. And I think it's kind of going to go back to, like I said on other topics, any collaboration is worth getting the input on. And if we find good connections that make sense for us, we need to pursue those. But we also need to take good hard looks at where we put our time and our effort and allocate them where they're going to do the most good.
Well, Networks has had some success over the years. But the thrust, I think, of the question was, do we need to go beyond that? Do we need to regionally be organized in some kind of economic development hub, is what the Mayor Grandy and Mayor Venable use as terms. I think we're moving that way. I think eventually we will have some kind of regional economic development entity. The fate of networks, that'll have to be worked out. It might be able to be subsumed as a part of the entity. It could stand on its own. There's some legalities there we'd have to work out. But the point is, do we cover not only traditional economic development, that's trying to get businesses, factories, warehouses, things like that to come, but can we also work on entrepreneurship? Can we work on retail, although that tends to be city by city because of the way our tax structure is organized. But I see that we're moving towards some kind of regional effort, and I've been cooperating in that.
I agree with Pat on a lot of that. I mean, cooperation, I think is a good thing as long as you're not, doing any harm to your people. The way I look at it is geographically for the entire region, we're like the perfect petri dish for entrepreneurs to come in and really liven up an area. So I think we all can be mutually beneficial. We can lean on each other to head in that direction. I think, like Pat said, I think we're already heading in that direction, which is great as long as it doesn't put our needs to the side of someone else's.
Thank you. Our next question. Do you think that Kingsport is prepared to utilize the smart city approach for better governance? If not, what would you suggest to better prepare for implementing this approach?
I'm going to be honest, I'm not versed too much on that, so I can't give you a very thorough response to that.
Well, Kingsport, we already been over that the fact that we are organized as a council manager form of government. I don't see a need to change that. Our tax structure is largely based on the way Tennessee puts out its laws and organizes. This is not an area that the city manager is asked to brief us on, and it's not one that has come up before the board, but we're not stuck in the mud. We're willing to consider new things, but again, our basic approach to government works pretty well. The government, I'm a small government advocate. I don't want the government to get any bigger and more become intrusive in your life, but we have tried to do things that help us grow in a smart way, like the recent housing developments. We made it easier for developers to put those in place.
What a question. I looked briefly at it, and in getting ready for this, much like Brian down here, I'm not a career politician. And I knew there was a lot of stuff I have to study up on and learn about. And I've done a lot of my homework, and I've been thinking about this for a couple of years and working darn hard at it. I gave a quick glance to what is more or less a buzzword, smart government, kind of ironic in some ways too. Reality is what Pat's saying here. What we got structurally works well. I think just refining and tuning the way we do things, we can move the city along efficiently without putting effort there needlessly.
Our next question. Kingsport recently approved a TIF, a tax increment financing, for a housing project that's called Westgate. Previously, they have used TIFs for East Stone Commons and the Eastman Road Food City Shopping Center. What criteria would you use to evaluate whether or not you would approve or be an advocate for any TIF proposal?
Okay, the TIF is probably one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal because of the flexibility it gives us to put that final closing on the sale when we're trying to court a project. I think we need to take a closer look. many of the TIFs that have come out recently and been approved and are either finished or in progress, I see where they do some good. This last one up here at Stonegate, I love the idea that that property's getting used, going to be on the tax rolls and everything, but man, I sure would have liked to have seen it be just a little bit more affordable housing for the everyday people. We've got such a big price gap in housing, and I'd like to see that used to close that gap so we have affordable housing for the people who can't afford 200K plus homes.
The short answer to the question is every tax incentive deal stands on its own merits. I've been an elected official now for almost 13 years, and I've probably voted against more TIFs or something like a TIF than I voted for. I voted for this one at Westgate because, look, it sat there for 18 years. Walmart left, nobody was interested. It was time to break the logjam and get on with it. Now, the East Stone Commons was the first time the city used the TIF, and that's probably still the model for the TIF. But the ones I voted against in the past, I thought gave an unfair advantage to the new business coming in compared to the existing businesses of the same type that were here. You know, we're not here to disadvantage our own longtime tax-paying businesses. So it's all a matter of the merit. Does it stand on the merit? And that's the way to go.
Well, for the Westgate, the Stonegate, I mean, I agree with Michael down there. I don't think we have nearly enough affordable housing for a different demographic of people. You know, we really want to promote home ownership, and if we keep pushing these projects towards $250,000 and above, you're going to cut out a whole demographic of people, working class people that want to own homes, that are stuck paying crazy rent prices, and where they can contribute paying taxes, paying property taxes. Stuff. You know, growing up, we had a house and we paid $30,000 for it once we got out of PUD apartments. And my dad was super proud of that house. We were all proud of it because we could afford a house. You take a little pride in something that you can say is yours. So I think we really need to lean in a direction to some more affordable projects coming up, and not necessarily the upper middle and high class.
Thank you. Our next question, what is your perception of the homeless situation in Kingsport, and what are the major steps that the city can take to manage the situation?
That's a fantastic question, and I'm glad you asked it. The homeless situation, the community, is something that I've really been digging into because, you know, driving around, a lot of people saying, oh, they're eyesores and we need to do this and we need to do that. And the real thing is, it's a needs-based scenario. They are people just like we are. There's no different. Many of us are a paycheck away from being in that exact same situation. Mental health is probably the #1 thing in the homeless community, followed by drug addiction and then being dealt a bad hand. So the city, we have fantastic organizations here. We got amazing people that already help with the homeless already, and we've got great programs set in place. But the thing is, we're all working too far apart from one another. It's very similar in goal, but we're all working too far apart. If we come together and work on a unified front, I think we can make a lot of effort. And if the city can get behind them, not necessarily taking over, but saying, hey, we have your backs, I think we can make a lot of progress and provide a umbrella of care that I know this city can do.
I can't answer this question in a minute, really. But listen, this administration has done more in the last 2 years for homeless than any previous. The city does not have a social services mission, and I am not prepared to ask our taxpayers to pay more solely to take on a new mission. Now, we have redistributed CARES funds appropriately, legally, that have helped the homeless. We've joined the Homeless Coalition and helped come about a lot of discussion, but the key here is there's a big part of the homeless population that is either mentally ill or drug addicted. And I've asked the governor, lieutenant governor, all the state reps and senators from our area to please give us some help. A county and a city doesn't have enough resources to address that, and they've listened to that, and I think we may see a response on that. But our taxpayers tell me when I have group meetings, we do not want to raise taxes to handle this problem. The private sector, the charitable sector is the best place to handle it.
I've done a lot of meetings with a lot of folks, and the ecosystem of support for homeless around here is incredible if you really look around and see what's out there. I think I've got a list of about 30 organizations within the city limits of Kingsport that fundamentally they all want the same thing, to help alleviate this homeless problem we're dealing with. And I think it's philosophical differences and a little bit of lack of leadership in bringing these folks together. They have these meetings, but these white noise from the side kind of interferes, because I think there's been people afraid to take the lead on it. To fund this, what I'd like to do is propose a small property tax break for anybody in the city limits who donates to an approved charity that helps homeless. I think in the long run, that could absolutely more than pay off the deficit in collections by money we save with social services, police, etc.
Thank you. I think that by the looks on the faces in this room, almost everyone was very much interested and engaged on that response. So thank you especially, gentlemen. Our next question, how would you prioritize the use of the $10 million COVID relief that is specifically for Kingsport to achieve maximum benefit for Kingsport? And with Sullivan County receiving almost $30 million, do you see some joint projects that would benefit both Kingsport and Sullivan County?
You know, it's that $10.5 million is one of surprising number of little silver linings we find in going through the pandemic. And certainly there's parameters on that money on what they can be spent for, but we also get a lot of latitude, because how well you qualify with the government on was that need COVID related. Absolutely, just about anything can fall in there if we're creative. So I haven't sat there and went through line items on that, and I'm not familiar enough. I got to spend some great time with Chris McCarthy the other day and learned a lot. I want to utilize the resources of the city. They know right now where, and I'm sure Pat's going to speak to this, where that money can do the most good, and whatever does the most good for the most amount of people in the city as a whole, that's for where I'm spending it.
Well, first we have to sort through the fine details of what is allowed to spend the $10.5 million, but if given a fair amount of discretion, I think we'd probably spend it on capital projects, which would enable us to not therefore go out and do more bond issue, and which keep the debt going down. I don't see a need to raise taxes this time, a property tax increase. I don't think the city manager will recommend one. As far as the Sullivan County share, well, I got my friend Gary Stidham here as commissioner, who could probably talk about that better than I could, but look, they're gonna remodel their jail, renovate their jail. That's gonna cost a lot of money. They're probably gonna have to raise taxes this time, which is all the more reason why I resist us raising taxes at Kingsport level. But, I'm not sure, having been a county commissioner for almost 7 years, I'm not sure that they would think that that money is part of theirs, but we have 14 commissioners who do represent Kingsport citizens out of the 24 on the commission.
Well, I think it's obvious that we don't want to raise taxes. I think that's a given. No matter what projects we talk about, no matter what we do, keeping taxes down is always what everybody wants. It's what everybody needs. I don't think anybody will fight and say, hey, we need to raise taxes. So that's the end of that one. But as far as our money, I think what we need to do as soon as we get it is really push it right back into the community and support these businesses that have been struggling, that have keep businesses from shutting doors. I mean, there's been businesses that's been around for 20+ years that shut doors because of this pandemic. This is a relief fund. Now, granted, Chris McCart may have plans for other things, but I think we need to support our local businesses and make sure that they can stay alive during these troubling times. And then if we have anything left over, maybe go back into the entrepreneurship program. Maybe we should give an incentive for people to start new businesses.
Thank you. Our next question. Do you support stronger building code enforcement? And do you have any thoughts on how the process can be improved?
I think building code enforcement, I think the city has done a pretty good job with building code enforcement so far. I think anytime a problem's brought up, they've handled it in a timely manner. I mean, that's pretty much where I stand on that. I can't really expand too much on it because I think the city's done a pretty good job on code enforcement.
I spend a lot of time in City Hall, and it's not to micromanage Chris or debug him or anything. Answer a lot of citizen emails and citizen phone calls, and boy, do I get a lot on code enforcement. I think we're going about it the right way. It's a hard area to do because it's a very legalistic, time-consuming process. People have asked me about the old Mason-Dixon building. We're going to a hearing next month with the owners of that building that they're going to have to fix it or tear it down or something. But that's an example of how difficult this is. And they live in Detroit, and they've not been especially cooperative. And so we range from big guys like that to the fellow who's not keeping up his house and his neighbors complaining. But Chris has put a lot of effort into code enforcement, and I think he appreciates me talking to the citizens that are complaining about it so he can do other things.
And from the people I've talked to out in public and the doors I've knocked on to, by and large, I think as a whole, yeah, we've done a good job on code enforcement. But the other thing I got to see by going down some of the streets and neighborhoods, most of the people in this room don't ever go down in Kingsport. There's a lot of areas that kind of get looked the other way on code enforcement that could use some, but it's a kind of a tightrope situation too. Generally, we're talking about the lowest income areas of town. And you start putting pressure on the people who own those as rentals, they're gonna raise rents, that hurts. The people who own those houses, it's hard for them to maintain it. But I think we can have a more fair and balanced thing to kind of incentivize in one way or another to people in those areas that are being overlooked to do a little better job to lift the city as a whole up.
Thank you. Since the estimates to adapt the Sullivan North building have gone up greatly, and we're facing with major adaptation costs to enable Sevier to be used as an elementary school, should you ask the Board of Education to reconsider their plan? Perhaps Sevier does not change and Robinson goes to Sullivan North, et cetera, but other options that might achieve a more cost-effective solution for our needed school facilities.
Obviously, a big question, and it's on the minds of a lot of taxpayers, but ultimately a lot of that decision structure is placed within the school board. I mean, again, with other city matters, as far as the VMA's involvement and the mayor's involvement in it, I think it's crucial we honestly assess the needs of the community and not the needs of, let me rephrase that, we assess the needs of the people who are using these facilities and base our decisions on that rather than what board and politician that thinks people want. We have to use that space and that resource to the wisest way we possibly can to make sure. I don't want to see us getting into a habit of we've got this much budget, let's spend every penny we can on something. Obviously, we've got a big investment in North, and Sevier can go a couple of different ways. Let's pick the best one for the city.
Dr. Mary Lee, I love you, but I'm not sure I agree with the premise of the question. You know, the school board, they're elected in their own right, and they've got a clear lane. We had citizens come to us several months ago, us, the PMA, and wanted us to tell the schools they had to be open 5 days a week, all day long, with all the children in the classroom. That's not my area. That's the school board's area. If you're upset with them, hold their feet to the fire. But in terms of how they're going to redistrict and use this school for that, this school for that, we're interested that they do it cost effectively, because in Tennessee, we're one of 14 states where the BMA has to approve the budget of the school board. They can't pass their own budget and set a tax rate. But you know, I respect that the citizens elect them, and if the citizens are unhappy with them, they need to make it known to them. But we're going to stay in our lane.
I agree with that. You know, the school board makes their own decisions, and you know, we saw an opportunity to acquire North, and we jumped all over it. Was it the best thing to do? I can't say. I can't say for sure. It's too early to tell. But I know we saw an opportunity to take advantage of the situation, and you know, as far as being cost effective and saving money, it makes sense. It's a much larger school. It provides a lot of accessible things for the children to get to. Turning Sevier into an elementary school, I think is great. Our school population is growing every single year, so obviously I think we need more room, but I don't want it to negatively impact our taxpayer dollars. But you know, kind of like Pat said, if the city does not like the things that the school board is doing, hold them accountable. That's what they're there for. They're elected officials. You know, let them know what you think.
Thank you. Recently, the Times News editorialized their support for Kingsport helping with the cleanup of Boone Lake. Should Kingsport help with the one-time expenditure for a quarter share of the cleanup cost? Should TVA impact funds be used for this purpose? And do you think there should be more cooperation with Bristol and Sullivan County on projects not only like this one, but others that might come before you?
I'm going to keep this real simple on this one. I don't think we should be putting money into anything without actually trying to figure out what we need to put our money into anyways. I mean, we still have a ton of projects that's either underfunded or misused, or money going to all the wrong places when we need to take care of things here at home. So as far as cleaning up the lake, I think it'd be great for the city to get behind and say, hey, we'd love volunteers. If organizations want to jump on, you know, we'll do everything we can, but I definitely don't want to chip in and take care of it, because we have more important things right now we need to take care of that's being overlooked.
I agree with the editorial. It was well written, well stated. We've gotten over $800,000 from TVA due to impact funds, they call it, because of the problems with the dam. Jeff Fleming, when he pushes move to Kingsport, he cites all our attractions like Bays Mountain Aquatic Center and the 2 lakes nearby and so forth. You know, I told Chris that I wanted to do this. He invited the Boone Lake Association to make their pitch. We're going to vote on it in April, and I'm going to vote yes, because we look chintzy. We look like we're not cooperating with the rest of the region if we deny $31,250 out of the over $800,000 we've gotten in impact money from TVA.
You know, my gut feeling when this issue came up here recently was absolutely not. If Kingsport needed something, I don't think Boone Lake Association and Sullivan County would be right there at our aid. However, a little further reflection on that, think about this quality of life and the unattractiveness and unusefulness of that lake. I think anything we can do to contribute, especially as Brian said, some time and energy to that project is well invested, but also the amount they're looking for is relatively small in the big picture. So I would be for giving funding for that.
Thank you. Our final question. Kingsport was the first city in the state to adopt the council manager form of government. And since that time, most of the medium cities in our state have adopted the same form. What do you see as the advantages of this form of government, and do you see any disadvantages? And do you feel Kingsport should continue with this form?
As I stated earlier, yeah, I'm absolutely a fan, just because it's more check and balance in the power structure. I think the more that's in place, although it occasionally will slow things down a little bit, trying to get everybody more on board. Overall, I think it's an excellent idea, so I'm all for continuing as we are there.
Well, I'm a believer in council manager form of government. You could, in the future, end up with a city manager who's not that good, who's not in tune with the board or whatever, but the board can get rid of them. I mean, that's what we do in council manager form of government. The board hires the city manager hires everyone else. The city manager and his staff are open to the citizens. If you think, if the thrust of this question is somehow they're these bureaucrats who don't care because they're not elected, there's nothing further from the truth. All these questions that I get and concerns from citizens, I don't solve them on my own. I got to put them in the hands of the right person that can solve them, and that includes the fine staff. They're human beings. They're capable of making mistakes, but the citizens are well represented by that staff, but by people like Darrell Duncan, who they can also go to and express their concerns.
The council manager form of government, I think it's a very, very good idea. I think it was established back in the turn of the century or whatever, when mobs and stuff were using their influence to get elected officials to use their power and get projects done that they want to do. People in each other's pockets. So I think having elected officials like the alderman and the mayor and just supposed to actually represent the people in the city and use their voices to give the people that feel like they haven't been heard, give them a voice up front so they know that they're being heard. So I really think it's a great form of government. I back it 100%.
Thank you. At this time, candidates, we welcome your closing statements. You may go right ahead.
How long did you say this was?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Golly. Well, first of all, thank you to the Kiwanis Club for hosting this. This is fantastic. Everybody's been great, friendly. Really appreciate this. Be honest with you, I thought I was prepared. This is my very first forum. I am shaking. Kept the blazer on because this thing's a different color underneath now. So I'm sorry for my stuttering, and maybe I've swayed away from a couple of points. I apologize. But, I was drawn to this city. When I left from the Marine Corps, that's all I talked about. When I came home, it already felt like there was a sense of change, and I didn't like it. It was starting to become a city that I didn't recognize. The people were different. When I was growing up, communities were tight-knit. You looked out for each other. We had neighbors that took me home and saw me doing something and passed me on to my parents, and that type of stuff. It's just a different world nowadays, and I understand we change. But I feel like the city has grown complacent over time as well. In the Marine Corps, they talk about complacency kills, and I don't want it to kill this great city. This city has so much potential. We have everything. The region, the people within it, the education we have. This place is truly special, and I hope we don't take any of this for granted. I just want to continue to grow. I've overcome many things in my life, working from a disadvantaged position, coming from government housing, growing up in cloud apartments, growing up with not a lot of money, had a loving family that worked their tail ends off for us. I got injured in Iraq, and I had overcome many injuries that I had sustained. Spent a lot of time. I'm still recovering to things to this day. So, adversity is something that I know very well. It's a very familiar song. And I feel like this city is faced with a lot of adversity right now. But I welcome adversity. I think it's the clay to building a strong foundation to a successful future. And I really appreciate you for giving me this time to speak. And I would really appreciate your vote in the future for mayor.
A lady called me one day. She asked, could I get her up to the head of the line to get vaccinated at the Speedway? I said, ma'am, I can't do that. Who do you think I am, the city manager? Now, Now, the city manager is probably the most consequential person in the day-to-day management of the city, and it's a great form of government. Takes a lot of political nonsense out of government, but the board makes the decisions. The board makes the hard decisions. The mayor has to show some leadership, and he can't just dictate what's going to happen. The pandemic was a rough time. I feel like truly that I was the right person, the right place, and the right time to be the mayor. The essence of what I've stood for is sound government, good government. We're going to maintain positive growth. We're going to have sound infrastructure. We're going to keep a low cost of living. We're going to have great schools. We're going to have excellent financial management. And all that is occurring right now. But a great future is not preordained. There has to be people working toward that. A lot of the questions I've heard here recently were about economic development. Economic development's hard. More and more every day, I sort of see things through the lens of economic development. We need to attract people to come here, and we do have them coming here. We have realtors that are selling houses to people from California without those people ever seeing the house. I mean, they saw it on the internet, but they didn't see it face to face until they'd already bought it. I mean, this is an attractive place to be, and we're going to build on that, and we're going to capture a lot of those remote workers, and we're going to still be in there pitching to get new businesses to come if we can. But you need somebody with some experience, and I have the experience and to do this to help lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to take a little bit of my closing statement time, and rather than talk about myself, talk about all of you for just a moment. As we know, times are going to change here, and our lives have changed and will continue to, and I think everybody here wants to see Kingsport do great things in the future, and we know it has that potential. I wish everybody in Kingsport was sitting here today, because this is a great forum. But it's still hard for you to learn about each one of us in this little amount of time in a very defined framework. So I ask you to continue learning about us. Feel free to reach out to any one of us. I'm sure we're all open and receptive to it. Learn about the candidates. And by all means, please, please, please tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your coworkers how important it is they get out in this election and vote. And it's shameful to me, the small percentage of people that turn out for this election in the past. And hopefully it'll be better this year, but the more the better. And let your voices be heard. But also ask yourself, when it's time to vote on May 18th, very honestly, looking forward and what we need to do in this city, who's going to be the person that when they're